I am putting up this segment of Meet the Press as an example of people that I absolutely understand. And the person that is going to be the point of this is Mike Pence. Mike Pence is a putz, number one. And number two, he's hoping that something probably does happen as far as Trump's concerned so he can slide into the presidency role. But being the good little twerp that he is going to defend Donald Trump at every position that Donald Trump takes, which I guess the vice president is fairly obligated to do it, but this guy takes it to a new level. Now, Mike Pence was on 3 Sunday morning shows, and I'm not going to put up clips from all 3. I'm just going to use this one since it was the first one that Mike Pence did on Friday. And again, for those of you who don't know it, most of the interviews that you see on Sunday morning excuse me, are done on Fridays, and Meet the Press, for whatever reason, is pretty much the first one that they do. Now, this particular clip is really showing the pushback of the people and a couple of congressmen who have been pushing back against Donald Trump all along. But in my opinion, there should be a lot more congressmen that are pushing back against Trump, because basically a lot of them are shutting their eyes to the fairly obvious facts that Trump is all over the place as far as the positions that he takes. And there's no consistency whatsoever in his actions. The only reason that I can think that he is not being consistent is because he's being puppeted by several different people. Without a doubt, in my opinion, Vladimir Putin is pulling his strings as far as international policy is concerned, specifically in the lack of condemnation of Putin. And given the fact that Donald Trump hasn't said anything about Putin's latest transgressions into the country of the Ukraine, that leaves a lot to be desired. Then on the domestic front, I believe he's being manipulated or controlled more so by Steve Bannon and Steve Miller in the White House, together with Mike Flynn. So the people are taking a look at this, and they are quite naturally pushing back. And that's why you've seen all of the protests around the country, the protests at the airports regarding the Muslim ban. And yes, folks, it is a Muslim ban. Just because you don't ban all Muslims doesn't mean that this particular one is not a Muslim ban. Anyway, here's the clip from Meet the Press, and check it out for yourselves, what Mike Pence does or doesn't do, i.e. what he does do is defend Donald Trump at every point, and he refuses to acknowledge that Trump, is a fuck up.
Third weekend in a row, thousands of people rallied in cities across the country, once again in opposition to President Trump. This week's issue, the travel ban, targeted mainly at Muslims. The Trump administration moved to get the travel restrictions immediately reinstated, but overnight a federal appeals court temporarily denied that request, instead calling for a full hearing on Monday. Here's what the president had to say at a Red Cross gala last night at Mar-a-Lago. The president had a lot to say yesterday before that, mainly on Twitter. One example: when a country is no longer able to say who can and who cannot come in and out, especially for reasons of safety and security, big trouble. Well, the president has taken great pains to deny his travel restrictions amount to a Muslim ban. 4 times yesterday he did refer to his policy as a ban in tweets. 2 weeks into the Trump presidency, we're learning the answer to the campaign riddle. Should we take Donald Trump literally or seriously? The answer appears to be both.
The world is in trouble, but we're going to straighten it out, okay?
Donald Trump is lashing out, tweeting on Saturday, "The opinion of this so-called judge, which essentially takes law enforcement away from our country, is ridiculous and will be overturned." Federal Judge James Robart, appointed to the bench by George W. Bush, explained his decision blocking Mr. Trump's travel ban on Friday night.
The state has met its burden of demonstrating that it faces immediate and irreparable injury.
Visas issued before the executive order have once again been declared valid for now. The travel ban confusion is the latest twist in a chaotic week and has even longtime U.S. allies asking, can the world handle Donald Trump-style diplomacy?
When you hear about the tough phone calls I'm having, don't worry about it.
President Trump is aggressive, tangling with longtime U.S. allies Mexico and Australia.
Don't hang up.
On tour in Melbourne, Australia, Bruce Springsteen didn't pull any punches.
We stand before you, embarrassed Americans, tonight.
And neither did Republicans on Capitol Hill.
If politics is music, the president was off key.
This, in my view, was an unnecessary and frankly harmful open dispute.
President Trump can be unexpected, warning Israel that new settlement construction may not be helpful in achieving peace. Or ambiguous. His administration, led by National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, is ratcheting up its rhetoric on Iran.
We are officially putting Iran on notice.
And levying new sanctions to punish Iran for its ballistic missile test.
They're not behaving.
But refusing to say whether the Trump administration will keep the Iran nuclear deal intact. And there are mixed messages to Russia as President Putin tests Mr. Trump in eastern Ukraine. Amid continuing protests and confusion around the world, and even at his own doorstep, the president is defending his aggressive approach to foreign policy, reiterating once again in the video address.
From now on, it's going to be America first.
And joining me now is the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence. Mr. Vice President, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, good to see you, John.
Let me start with the overnight developments in the ban. We now have, there's 10 different suits in various courts. Right. Obviously, the big one now has the one in Washington State. Let me ask you the question this way, and I know you're pursuing an appeal to this decision.
We are.
Is it time to sort of cut bait and say, you know what, rescind the order, go through Congress, because there is support for the idea, but the specifics appear to be a challenge for you. Any thought of essentially rescinding and trying again?
From the outset of his campaign for president and the outset of this administration, President Trump has made it clear he's going to put the safety and security of the American people first, and using a list of countries that the Obama administration and the Congress have certified were compromised by terrorist influence. 7 different countries permanently suspending immigration from Syria and suspending for a set period of time the remaining 6 countries is consistent with the president's commitment to do just that. We're very confident the president's operating within his authority as president, both under the Constitution and under clear statutory law. That's what's so frustrating about the decision.
Well, in all honesty, the statutory law is confusing, because there's the one that you're referring to in 1952, but there's the one that was passed in the 60s that seems that some people believe makes this unconstitutional.
Well, look, when you have people as diverse as Alan Dershowitz and Jonathan Turley, who have acknowledged the merits of the president's action under the Constitution and the law, I think it speaks for itself. We're very confident that we're going to prevail. We'll accomplish the stay, and we'll win the case on the merits. But again, the focus here is on the safety and security of the American people.
That's why my question on the idea of sort of pulling it, because if this is a concern, and this is something that's, you can't wait. You and I both know the court system's going to take a while. This could take weeks, maybe months. Why not do this in a way where you have proper consultations with different departments? There was a part of this that many Republicans in Congress believe it was done hastily. You have an opportunity to now to do a do-over. Why not?
Yeah, it was not done hastily. There may have been some leaders on Capitol Hill that were not informed in the usual niceties of Washington, D.C. But look, we live in a very dangerous world. The reality is there are people around the globe who have inspired violence here in the homeland. We just saw in the basement of the Louvre a machete-wielding terrorist from Egypt that came into that country. I mean, the American people know that the threats that we face are real. And they elected President Donald Trump for many reasons, but one of them was for us to rethink our immigration policies relative to ensuring that people who represent a threat to our families and communities don't come into this country. We'll continue to press that. We remain very confident that the president's actions are on solid constitutional and legal grounds.
Well, let me take.
It can't be for the mere reason that you mentioned religions, i.e., giving Christians, okay, a leg up on everyone else. I.e., that means that there is a religious test, and Christians can meet that test in order to get a waiver on being banned, whereas other people, specifically Muslims, cannot. So the Constitution prohibits there being any type of a religious test for entry into this country.
Let me take you at your word on that. You just brought up the Louvre issue. You noted that the person came through from Egypt, but on this travel ban, no Egypt, no Saudi Arabia, no Pakistan, no Afghanistan. That is, if this is your concern, then why weren't those countries included? It does feel as if it was more done because you wanted that Obama talking point.
Well,
exactly, and that is exactly why it was done, to quote unquote keep his campaign promise on a Muslim ban.
No, it was done because both the Congress and the prior administration identified 7 countries, one in Syria torn asunder by civil war, and the other 6 that lack. Here's the issue. As Secretary Kelly said so well in that press conference, the issue is these are countries that do not have the internal systems in place so that we can be confident today that when people present themselves for access to the United States, that they are who they say they are. Now, there's a 30-day review underway. There's a temporary suspension. We're going to work with those remaining 6 countries to make recommendations for ways that they can enhance. But the other countries that you mentioned, the United States, our policy has been that we're confident that when someone comes from that country, that they are in fact who they say they are. But this is really about the safety and security of the American people. It is not a religious ban.
Okay, so what he said just absolutely doesn't make sense. He said that they are not confident that the procedures in those 7 countries is sufficient in order for people coming into our country from these countries to be properly vetted. That's what he said. If that is in fact the case, don't we use the same vetting procedures for all of the countries, not just the 7, but Saudi Arabia and Turkey and I guess any country that's located in the Middle East? And how come Israel, okay, who absolutely there are terrorists operating in those countries, how come they're not subject to the ban? I mean, that's kind of pushing it. But if you're applying the same vetting processes across the board, you're trying to tell me that there aren't any terrorists coming in or residing in Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia or believe it was Lebanon or the United Arab Emirates, 2 of which had been documented as financially and ideologically supporting certain terrorists. Doesn't make sense.
And people coming into this country from countries for which we cannot be confident that they don't represent a threat.
But did the president undermine your case here in the religious ban when he told the Christian Broadcasting Network that they would prioritize Christians?
Well,
absolutely.
I think the president was reflecting on the fact that Christians who have faced persecution across the wider Middle East have not been treated oftentimes
so it's religious
as others, and it's not a religious test. I know.
It absolutely is a religious test. He's sitting over here lying. And as far as the treatment of Christians trying to emigrate into this country, the last year, or I believe over the past several years, the number of Muslims emigrating from those countries versus the number of Christians emigrating from those countries, the difference in number is only 1,000 to the benefit of the Muslims. So only 1,000 more Muslims have emigrated into this country than Christians. So the Christians haven't been treated unfairly.
It's straining to do that. No, it identified 7 countries irrespective of the religious composition of those countries. 7 countries have been compromised by terrorism. And I got to tell you, look, we respect the right of every American to be heard in protest, online, their messages, and that's what freedom looks like, and that's what freedom sounds like. But I truly do believe that a majority of the American people are grateful that we have a president who's willing to take decisive action, use the authority he has under the Constitution and the law to pause with regard to these 7 countries and rethink the way that we admit people in America.
You don't accept the notion that you guys did this a little too hastily and a little sloppy.
We live in a dangerous world. I think the American people welcome a president as decisive and as action-oriented as President Trump.
So, in your opinion, he was right to do it hastily, even though it was done sloppily. That was the question that you didn't answer.
Ask about the president's criticism. He called him a so-called judge.
Yeah.
That is the leader of the executive branch saying something. That's that made a lot of people uncomfortable. I know your answer is, hey, this is Donald Trump. People need to get used to it. But there is a tendency here to just not take criticism constructively or seriously. He accused Chuck Schumer of having fake tears. It's like anytime he gets some sort of critique, he wants to demunify them, make them go away. Is that healthy?
Well, look, the President of the United States has every right to criticize the other 2 branches of government, and we have a long tradition of that.
Yeah, and that's not the question. He obviously has every right to criticize anyone he wants, but it's the way that he does it. He does it in a demeaning fashion, okay? He denigrates the person. He doesn't call into question their points of view and attack their points of view. He attacks people personally.
In this country. But
Is this a constructive way to do it?
I think people find it very refreshing that they not only understand this president's mind, but they understand how he feels about things.
See, and that's bullshit. People do not find the fact that the president demeans personally people. That's a bunch of crap. That's not refreshing. Okay, that's just acting like a bully and calling people names. And that's not something that we're supposed to be for.
Expresses himself in a unique way. And again, the judge's actions, look, the judge's actions in this case in Washington, which are at odds with a federal district court judge in Boston who upheld the constitutionality of the president's actions, the judge's actions in this case, making decisions about American foreign policy and national security, it's just very frustrating to the president, to our whole administration, to millions of Americans who want to see judges that will uphold the law and recognize
all he did was put a
the
pause.
authority the president of the United States has under the Constitution to manage who comes into this country.
All he did was put a pause. But on this issue of criticism, I found something you said about President Obama 7 years ago. Take a listen.
This president has shown an unusual interest in commenting on his critics in the media and here on Capitol Hill. The American people don't want to hear the president's reflections and commentary on criticism.
Look, and I know that when one party's in power, the other party says things like that, but that is what Congressman Mike Pence thought of when presidents got too caught up in their criticism. Should the president take the advice of Congressman Mike Pence?
Well,
I love it when they catch these guys talking out of both sides of their mouth. And he's caught. That's why he was sitting there laughing, because he knew he was caught.
my hair's the same color as it was back then. You know, I've learned a lot. I've learned
You
a lot
think
about.
this-
Sure, the prerogative presidents have to be able to respond to their critics. Look, the president of the United States represents all the American people. And in President Donald Trump, just like his predecessor, he's going to exercise the prerogative to criticize other branches of government when he thinks they're not acting in a way that's consistent with the best interests of the American people.
See, but he missed the nuance. No one questions the president's authority or ability to comment critically about the position that someone else takes. It's in the way he does it. He calls people names. You know, that the judge that he tried to disparage in his civil lawsuit or in the civil lawsuit filed against him, number one, he misidentified the guy by calling him a Mexican, and then he disparaged that judge because of his Mexican heritage. That's got nothing to do with anything, and he just did it again by calling into question this particular judge in Washington, calling him a so-called judge, where the Republicans across the board basically had loved this by Bush. So they couldn't use that it's an Obama appointee line, so they had to come up with something else. So they did. So-called judge. It's no such thing as a so-called judge. It's either you're a judge or you're not. And he has no actual defense on the characterization by Donald Trump against this particular judge.
All right, I got to ask you to respond to something, an excerpt of the Super Bowl interview the president's doing about Vladimir Putin. Here it is.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him. Will I get along with him? I have no idea. It's
He's
very
a
possible
killer,
I
though.
won't.
Putin's a killer. A lot of killers. We get a lot of killers. Why do you think our country's so innocent?
Moral equivalency?
No.
Is there a moral equivalency there? What was that, Mr. Vice President?
No, not in the least. Not in the least.
Absolutely it was. He was absolutely making a moral equivalency between Putin and the United States. So, and for this guy to say anything else, he's just trying to spin away from the topic. But here he goes.
Look, President Trump has been willing to be critical of our country's actions in the past, and what you're hearing there is a determination by the President of the United States to not let semantics or the arguments of the past get in the way of exploring the ability to work together with Russia and with President Putin in the days ahead. Specifically, if you play the rest of that interview.
Yeah.
He said he didn't know if we would be able to get along with them better, but the president's top priority is to hunt down and destroy ISIS at its source.
Okay, now he's kind of sliding away from it. The whole point is there was a comparison made between the United States and Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Putin is, I'm not going to say he's a Hitler, but he's in that neighborhood. And Donald Trump basically was equating him with us. And it was a moral equivalency, and you are basically just lying to the American people when you say there isn't.
We have a common interest with Russia to do that. The president has made it very clear. He doesn't know whether he'll have a better relationship.
I mean, you know
with
the
Russia.
Putin record here. Let me just put it up here. Obviously, a former KGB agent, in itself an institution of mass killings. What he's done to fund and promote the separatists in eastern Ukraine. Proxy wars that he's gotten involved with that, of course, ended up in the killing of innocent passengers on MH17. Then there's the list of mysterious deaths that are Putin-related. This is not something, what American leader has done something similar? That's what the president seemed to say there.
No, that's not what the president said in the least.
Then why can't he say a negative thing about Vladimir Putin?
Bingo! Bingo!
He has expressed himself in the campaign, an election that he won, that he was determined to go forward and see whether or not we might be able to start anew in a relationship with Russia.
Okay, and again, he didn't answer the question. Why can't Donald Trump say anything negative about Vladimir Putin? We're not talking about going forward. We're talking about the present and commenting on the things that he's done presently, like the invasion of Crimea, which Donald Trump basically indicated that he really didn't have that much of a problem with it. Okay, how about the current Russian activity in the eastern Ukraine, where fighting has started, and they're promoting fighting both by the citizens of eastern Ukraine and including Russian resources against the other people of the Ukraine. And he can't call himself to condemn those actions. If he can't condemn those, he can't condemn anything.
And the president has said many times, if we got along with Russia better, that would be a good thing for the world. If we were able to work with Russia to hunt down and destroy ISIS and confront radical Islamic terrorism, that would be a good thing. And what you have in President Trump is someone who is not going to look in the rear view mirror so much as looking out the windshield. But he's also made it very clear, Chuck, maybe not, maybe it's not going to work out, but I think he's absolutely determined. He had a productive conversation with President Putin. He spoke to the Ukrainian President Poroshenko yesterday about the need to maintain the ceasefire. He's going to continue to engage these world leaders. He's going to put America first, and he's going to look, as he always does, for a way that we can move forward and make a deal that'll advance the interests of the United States.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that he talked to the president of the Ukraine about trying to maintain a ceasefire, but damn sure he didn't talk to Putin when he spoke to him this past previous Saturday about maintaining the ceasefire and stopping his interference in the affairs of the Ukraine. Damn sure guaranteed that that never came up.
You comfortable with using those same words to describe Vladimir Putin?
Well, using what words?
They basically, you know, yeah, he's a bad guy, but we've done some bad things too. Are you comfortable with that moral equivalency?
Again, I don't accept that it's a moral equivalency.
And again, it is a moral equivalency, and you were a mealy-mouthed asshole that just trying to spin to protect your boss.
I really don't.
Do you think he misspoke?
No, I truly believe. Look, President Trump has been critical of American policy in the past, and
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. I'm still trying to find something somewhere where Donald Trump has been critical of Vladimir Putin, and I'm still looking.
I expect he's always going to continue to be candid with the American people, but what you have in this president is an absolute determination to re-engage the world. I see it in the telephone calls with world leaders. We saw it when Prime Minister May came, but it's to re-engage world leaders on American interests, to bring American strength back to the world stage. Okay. And in President Donald Trump, people know that here's someone who knows how to put a deal together, and if he can make a deal with Russia or other countries that's going to advance the security of the American people, advance the interest of peace in the world, we're going to look to do that. All right.
Okay, Chuck, you should have just kind of asked him, is the way that he treated the Australian Prime Minister or the President of Mexico, was that really how we want to engage with foreign leaders? How he's denigrated Angela Merkel in Germany, is that really a way that we want to engage with foreign leaders? You left a lot on the table here, buddy.
Vice President Pence, I'm going to leave it there. I know you're about to go to the Super Bowl. Do you have a rooting interest?
Yeah, and I don't give a damn about whatever interest he would or would not have on the Super Bowl. Mike Pence is just part of the problem. That being Donald Trump being in office. You know, it is what it is. He's in there. We got to make the best of it. But hopefully the lifting of that ban on Muslims coming out of those 7 countries will be affirmed. And I have no doubt about it that they're going to try to appeal this to the Supreme Court. And at this point, it's more than likely, but I could be surprised, but it's more than likely going to end in a 4-4 tie. It could end in a 5-4 tie, only because of Trump's disparagement of another judge. But I'm not really holding out a lot of hope on that. And as far as everything else, Congress is going to have to step up to the plate on this one, because if they allow Donald Trump to continue to mete out these executive orders, which are, and I did a video on it, most of them are bullshit, but set policy that is in opposition to the will of the American people, and these guys are basically giving it lip service. 2018 can't come fast enough in order to move some of these guys.